last deadlift, I have to win. What it feels to me, or what I used to do, is it felt to me like I would get out this key that I keep hidden away, and I go to kind of like the dark recesses of my mind, and I kind of unlock this door where all the emotions that are just inappropriate to let into society, like I would let them out and say, like, you get to focus this for this one lift. And I remember the first time I did this, like really clear words came out regarding the person who psychologically abused me as a kid. And the words were, he's coming to take it away. And you hear that and you will find levels of strength that like you didn't know you had. And so I heard that. I picked up the bar, I lifted it, I did that over and over. I won championships, I set records. So I'm now wiring this into my brain.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff LaCosta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in.
Hey.
Hi, Nadia. So good to see you.
So good to see you, Jeff. We had a terrific week.
We sure did. But tell me about yours.
Well, a couple of things happened in my life, pretty big. I opened Spark Your Zeal LLCC.
Woohoo! Congrats. I know. I loved your text that said, I'm an entrepreneur. I was like, of course you're an entrepreneur. I know you're an entrepreneur, but what happened?
It's just so easy to do business in America, Jeff. In Italy, this process would have costed me days and days. I did LCC, publication and trademark, all of it in 45 minutes.
That's awesome. That's how it should be. That's the lifeblood of the economy right there.
So incredible. Today I opened our business bank account, and it's fascinating because I have such a good vision for the next 12 months and then 5 and 10 years. But how am I going to get there? I had no idea.
That's pretty good. So it's just years 2, 3, and 4. Those are the mystery years right now. That's not bad.
What about you? What happened in your life?
Oh, we had a great week. We were out on the lake a lot. It is beautiful weather in Georgia. And today we had a nice little storm. So I'm coming to you live from a co-working space because we lost power at our house. And so had to finish the working day.
You did have a storm.
We did, yeah. It's just summertime. We have a couple, but they've been definitely a little worse this year than usual. Our power company said they had more outages than ever before in the history of their existence. So a pretty bad storm, I think.
Wow. Well, stay safe, please.
Yeah. All good, though. I'm very excited for today. I would not have missed this conversation. I know we've got Cheng, who's coming on, who is just an incredible leader at Google and somebody that I'm definitely looking forward to learning from.
I am very excited to be talking to him. I've been following him on social media a lot. He does a lot on LinkedIn, and I've been listening to a lot of shows that is being to his overall branding, and the values that it stands for are absolutely incredible.
How long do you say you've been a coach? Because I say I've been a coach for many years, but Newton has been a coach for more than 15 years, which absolutely trumps my time.
Wow, there he is. Newton here is dialing in.
Hello.
Hi there.
How's it going?
Someone sounds quite professional in there.
Yeah, I got the blue Yeti mic that everyone else seems to have. It's like $80, not bad, but a really good value.
Well,
This is going to go on our list.
yeah, tell us more because mine is $200, but yours sounds better.
Yeah, what that is a substantial mic, and I like the I like the color variety.
Yeah, but yours sounds better to my ears. Well, I guess we'll see at the end when we edit.
Okay, yeah, yeah. We'll see. Maybe it's just like the mixer, but we'll see what actually comes through.
Oh, it's such a pleasure having you today.
It's good to see you.
Hmm.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm coming to you from the amazing power of wired headphones today because I just lost power at my house. So I'm in a co-working space making it come together.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I was looking at my calendar, and depending on how my daughter's dentist appointment went, it was either going to be the nice mic setup or you'd get me calling in from a car.
We'll
So
take you any way we
dentist
can
went
get you.
smooth. Here I am. Jeff, we haven't met before, right?
I don't think we have, Newton. Jeff Lacosta. I work also at Google. I'm in the services side of the ads business, but also work on 99 Humans, which is why we're here today.
Awesome. Well, very nice to meet you. And how did you guys get hooked up working on this together?
Well, so this is a story that a lot of our listeners probably might remember, but Jeff is a writer, a professional New York best-selling author, and one day he reached out and said, "Let's write a book." And then the rest is history. We transformed it on a podcast.
That's awesome. Good for you guys. And I had read about like kind of the idea of this podcast was let's go talk to 99 humans, and through that, like maybe you'll end up with a book at the end, maybe you'll end up with something else, but you're going to learn a lot and have like a pretty beautiful picture of humanity for whatever we're going through right now.
That's right. I think we both were passionate, maybe without realizing we shared the same passion about the humanity of leadership. Looking at really impressive leaders like yourself, frankly, where when I scan through your LinkedIn, I go, holy shit, who is this guy? How does he do what he does? And also,
looks pretty good.
It looks pretty good. You've done a nice,
Yeah.
you've done a nice job there, making your bullets really snazzy.
Thanks.
But also, we know, right? It's just people, and the business of leadership is people working with people. So it's really messy, and it's funny, and it's hard, and it's sad. And that's what 99 Humans is all about, is not people's leadership philosophies, not how you got to where you are, but what's a story of leadership being messy, of being human, and telling those to fill up the energy well, kind of inspire, but also just to remind us that we can do really great things, because the CEOs on earnings calls are sometimes spilling coffee in their laps in the middle of the call. And the managers who look amazing are having hard days themselves sometimes, and that's good to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly why I'm here. So let's get into the messy stories, and I want to share them all.
Well, so I wanted to piggyback on some of the work you knew have been already doing. And the first thing that I would love our listeners to dig in with us is, what was the moment in your career? I assume it's been fairly recently, but would love to hear your perspective, that you decided that you wanted to put your thoughts into the word more actively.
So I'm thinking about. So for your listeners, just for context, I went on mental health leave in January 2022, and coming back from that, well, additional context, I work in the field of health and well-being. So I'm director of health and performance at Google. And what that means is I am responsible for a suite of amenities and spaces and services that are there to support the physical, mental, social, and spiritual health of our Google community. And so I do this programmatically. I have a pretty deep level of expertise in many related areas. And here I am burning out, throughout the pandemic. As we get more into my story, we'll find out there's plenty that contributed to that before the pandemic. Like here I am burning out. And so with a lot of guilt and shame of how not just how I was letting my team down, but how I was letting my family down, I went on mental health leave in January 2022. While I was going on leave, because of the field I work in, I have access to a lot of the research, both internal and external, of how we're all doing. And so while I felt a lot of deep guilt and shame, I did not feel remotely alone in those struggles because I knew the data. So coming back, I came back in a better place. I did a lot of work on myself. I continue to, but I came back in a better place, and I came back with a determination that I was going to do whatever I could to help others because I knew so many others were struggling. And so as I was coming out of it, a friend of mine does a podcast focused a lot on men's mental health, and he invited me on to tell my story. And so I said, "You know what? Let's do it. Like if I want to stay true to my values, it's the right thing to do." So I went on and I told my story as openly and vulnerably as I could. And then I posted it on Facebook and Instagram, and it got a great response. And then there's this nagging voice in my head that was saying, "Yeah, but you're trying to fix this in the workplace. Shouldn't you post this on LinkedIn?" And that just terrified me. So I'm like, you don't do that in front of your professional network. But I knew what my values were telling me to do. So I wrote up a post. I posted it on LinkedIn. I proactively emailed a bunch of my friends to say, like, you're going to see something weird, but I feel like this is the right thing to do. And if this resonates with you, can you amplify it? That post got 20 times the engagement of anything I had posted up until that point. And it was all extremely positive. It was a mixture of really deep support and then really deep resonance to say, I am so glad you are saying this out loud because I have the same struggles. And those came from comments, it came from direct messages from those who didn't want to be seen. A lot of people, they wouldn't even like the post in public, but they would grab me in the hallway to say, I saw that. Thank you for doing that. But they didn't want to be seen clicking like on that. And so you can see like there were people of varying levels of openness and vulnerability, all struggling and all masking what they were struggling with at various levels. And so when I saw that, I thought, well, let's post again. Let's tell more stories. Let's see, like, if I have more to say, let's keep going. And the engagement just continued and continued. So then I said, you know what? I'm going to make a commitment. I will tell my story anywhere I'm invited to do so for at least 12 months. And we are now in month 15, and I have more speaking engagements than I can handle. So we're going to keep going. We're going to see where this goes. We're going to keep asking, how can this be used to drive sustainable culture change so we can better take care of ourselves and each other, and see if we can do some good in the world.
How do you find the strength to do this? Because I think the typical way folks think of burnout is I'm working too hard, I'm doing too much. And here you are going, gosh, I was really burning out. Let me go do a lot more and do podcasts and speaking engagements and this and that. Help me understand how those two things connect on fighting burnout and doing more things outside of the day-to-day job.
So my mental model of how I sustain at least myself, and I think this is true for many humans, is like, yes, we have finite capacity, but it's pretty dynamic. And so some of the activities, and we don't need to name parts of our jobs where we feel this way, they're just straight drains. They're like, I have 100 points of capacity, that took 50, they're not coming back. The things that I do that are deeply meaningful and deeply purposeful, sometimes they give back some of that energy, so I have even more capacity. Over time, I find those things actually grow my capacity. Like I can do more. Like it gives me it gives me energy, but it also gives me a determination to do better. So then I evolve my systems. So I was actually, more context for your audience, as a we'll call it a side hobby, but I've taken it way too far. I'm a world champion competitive powerlifter, and I'm about to go for an even more ambitious championship that I will compete for in mid-September. And I was talking to my coach about this, and honestly, I show up today and I'm quite caffeinated because I've run myself into the ground again this week. It was a very intense week, and I was telling him it's a little weird. The thing that my escape for this week will be stepping away and crushing myself with heavy squats, because it's mine and I can pursue it and I'm passionate about it. And so what I'm finding is, like, this question of, like, how are you doing this? Like, you have your day job, you have your family, you are pursuing world championships in powerlifting, and you're doing this mental health advocacy on the side. I think there's two things. One was my theory around how, finding meaningful and purposeful activities, it fills you up as well as takes energy. The other thing is I've set my life up in this weird, we'll call it homeostasis, where when I was talking to my coach, we're comparing like two scenarios, where a very common one is to say you have an individual who's they're heavily invested in work, they're heavily invested in family, they let their health go. For me, I've put a stake in the ground around this thing called competitive powerlifting. And I can only do it at a high level if I maintain my health across physical health, my mental health and stress, my sleep, my nutrition. And on the one hand, you'd say, doesn't that all cause stress to have to juggle all these things? It absolutely does. It also creates energy and capacity. It forces me to find better systems. And so if you combine the two, or you compare the two scenarios where both these people are stressed and are struggling, one is a world champion powerlifter, the other has sacrificed their health. I'm getting better outcomes than, I think, this case as a world champion powerlifter. I might be equally or maybe even more stressed in some moments, but I haven't sacrificed my health. So over time, my audacious bet is, yeah, by going so big in this activity of powerlifting, by going so big in these purposeful activities of mental health advocacy, I'm going to come out ahead than if I had just said, you know what, I don't have the capacity to invest in those things.
So, first, I want to say that I'm obsessed with you. I am very thankful that you wrote that post. I remember that time I was like, oh my God, this is my idol. This is exactly the person that I was wanting to meet. So I really love how you're bringing together this corporate approach of shifting cultures and creating workplaces that are healthier on so many fronts. So please never stop doing that and continue doing that. I've been consuming some of your content. I really love hearing you speak on all of these shows. Please continue doing that. I think you give a lot of us a lot of motivation and inspiration. And the last thing I wanted to, kind of create a continuum. We had two guests on this show. One was actually published yesterday, Jiyoung Kim, and then another one is Dr. Amir that we published a few weeks back, that actually wrote a book that is called Cracking the Stress Secret. And one thing that these two have in common, that is in common with what you said, is that not necessarily by doing less things, you're going to be less stressed. And this was one point from Dr. Amir that stuck with me, which is every ambitious person on this planet is going to be stressed. Now, the question is, what is the good stress and what is the bad stress? And to your point, what is the net energy contributor, let's say, to your life? My question for you today is, you seem to be an extremely disciplined person. Whenever I follow some of your content, I'm like, How the heck is Newton doing burpees and keeping his diet so clean? I think one time you posted about your fat percentages. I was like, whoa. I mean, you are extremely disciplined. I don't want to ask you what motivates you because you said what motivates you, but how do you keep that discipline in check the days that you might not feel like?
I will describe some good reasons and some bad reasons.
Love it.
So first, I'll start with the overall mindset, and it's taken me a while to get to a point where I can articulate this simply, even though I think I've felt this for a long, long time. The notion of work-life balance, it it never really resonated with me, even though as a health and well-being professional, I've probably used the term so many times. And I think the underlying, if you parse the language, there's kind of like this false notion that you can find a balance point, and that or balance can be in any moment can happen. I don't know if that's true. And so I kind of at some point I just threw the whole thing out and said, I'm not going to talk about that anymore because I don't even feel like the thought experiment's worth it. And instead, what I've been asking myself is, if you look at how you're spending your time and energy, are you building the life you want? Are you building a life you want to live? And so I can look at any one activity and say, does this contribute to that? And in isolation, like if I go all the way down to like, some administrative task that I have in my job at Google, I can probably get pretty frustrated. But then I just need to take a step back and say, why are you doing this work at Google? I think one is working in the field at Google, even though it's really stressful working at Google, at least for me. I get to contribute to potential change that means a lot to me. It's the opportunity to do so much good in the world. That's one thing. I think the other thing is, if I want to drive change in the workplace, I have to be able to do it from the hot seat. Like, I got to stay in the system. And then lastly, by staying in the system, it's making the work I'm doing much more powerful. Where, I think if Nadia, if you saw my content as someone who, say, left Google and was chilling by a lake, not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, if you've decided to do that, I hope you own that and you love it. But for me, staying in the fire and saying, no, I'm going to live differently inside the fire just to show it can be done so that we can have a different conversation. So that's why I am still there at Google. And so I'm like, are you staying at Google? By staying at Google, are you building the life you want? I can say now, hell yeah, I am. And it doesn't always feel good, but hell yeah, I am. So that's one thing. And then I can kind of go through the other aspects of my life of, parenting. I don't know if you guys have kids, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. But I know I want a rich family life. And so if I have to deal with my 5-year-old screaming at me because I read a story wrong, like, yeah, we're building a relationship. This is family life. And I feel like it's all worth it. So hell yeah, I'm going to do that. And hell yeah, I'm going to go in the garage and I'm going to lift weights and I'm going to crush myself with squats. And then I'm going to eat salads because I have this hypothesis that by chasing these big goals that support all aspects of my well-being and are filled with meaning and purpose, I can live a richer life than if I took my foot off the accelerator.
I love that. And you're using the phrase rich life. And I'm wondering if that at all connects to Ramit Sethi, who's kind of making it out in the world right now, talking about building your rich life. And
yes, I love his notion of that.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, your concept resonates so much of knowing what your rich life is. And that gives you power, that gives you energy to continue doing the hard things because you're filling up your bucket at the same time. Can you take us back to that burnout story that we're hearing a lot of the aftermath of, the amazing, inspiring work that you're doing today. And thread through that awareness that you had back then of what your rich life was, and maybe how that contributed to this burnout moment. Because I think that from a human leader, I mean, you're a people manager, you're a leader. There's people counting on you, and you've got lots of pressure, as you said, in this kind of Google world to perform. How did you evolve in that awareness and intention in understanding your rich life from pre and post sort of burnout moment?
So I talked about how my mindset, there's good and bad aspects to it. Thinking about the rich life and those goals, I think that's the positive frame. But as we know, we're really good at deceiving ourselves. And so if you've looked through some of my posts, like I actually, throughout my first in my mental health leave and then ongoing, I'm going through a lot of therapy and trying to unwind some people pleasing tendencies I have in myself that are probably some might be from my culture, some might be from other places, and some might be from childhood trauma, specifically related to bullying and psychological abuse. And so the things that I need to unwind are, I can frame chasing my achievements as building a rich life or building the life that I want to say hell yeah to. There is a definite dark side of me that is still trying to outdo someone who hurt me in my childhood, just to be really frank. So, one story I like to tell is powerlifting competitions. The way it works, you do 3 lifts. You do a squat, a bench press, and a deadlift. The deadlift is the last lift of the entire competition. And so I'm a deadlift specialist. So if I win, I usually win on my very final lift. And so through the whole competition, I'm like ice cold. I like laugh, joke, but emotionally I'm ice cold. Last deadlift, I have to win. What it feels to me, or what I used to do, is it felt to me like I would get out this key that I keep hidden away, and I go to kind of like the dark recesses of my mind, and I kind of unlock this door where all the emotions that they're just inappropriate to let into society, like I would let them out and say, like, you get to focus this for this one lift. And I remember the first time I did this, like really clear words came out regarding the person um, who psychologically abused me as a kid. And the words were, he's coming to take it away. And you hear that, and you will find levels of strength that like you didn't know you had. And so I heard that. I picked up the bar, I lifted it, you know, I did that over and over. I won championships, I set records. So I'm now wiring this into my brain. But that's like a really distinct example. I think the scary part was that I had to realize that thing didn't stay under lock and key throughout the rest of my life. It was kind of like I thought it was, but it was more like poisonous gas that was leaking out of this container that I thought was airtight. And it would show up in places like saying yes to projects that I knew I didn't have the bandwidth for, or telling people yes, like, or taking on things because I was afraid someone would disapprove of me if I didn't do that. And so going on the leave, having those realizations that like, hey, this thing was never in lock and key. It's kind of poisoned the whole system. And so you need to take some hard looks at, when you commit to something, what's driving you? And it's still all mixed up. But I get clearer and clearer by just reminding myself it's there and really interrogating myself, like, why are you going to say yes to this? Or should you say yes to this? So yeah, that's the most honest thing I can say.
I mean, Newton, part of me would stay here, listen to you for hours. You are speaking truths that a lot of people in the corporate system are experiencing. And because a lot of times this is a question that when you start going out, you get um, on how can we empower more people in owning their life and their expertise. Especially right now, we are in a system where there's a lot of fears. The economy still presents a lot of challenges, and often saying no to something, if that doesn't fit the life that you want to build for yourself, is a bit scary because there might be consequences. And not everyone has the luxury to decide what to say yes for. And so, what would be your word of advice for those people out there that are not in position of power, are not in position of management, and that they still need to bear with some situations that they don't have exits? Just today at 2 p.m., I did a coaching session with a woman that she ended up crying. Somehow, all the sessions with me end up in tears. Um, so
You're very good at what you do.
but sometimes I'm like, we gotta do something to empower others. And it's funny you saying that, because the question that makes people cry is always when I ask, how do you believe inside your heart that you deserve to prioritize what is in line with your life?
Hmm. So I'll use there's kind of a rough framework I use specifically when people ask. I use the term spiritual health, mainly because it made it a little more palatable to talk about spirituality in the workplace setting. If I'm just very blunt, because once I use spiritual health, I could point to a bunch of research that talks about spiritual health or spirituality in the workplace. But let's talk about spirituality. Real big topic. The way I boil it down, it's from a thinker named Casper ter Kuile, who's over at Harvard Divinity School. And he's tried to do a lot of research on spirituality and then make it more generalizable regardless of your religious background, or maybe you might not be religious. And it's simply something to the effect of, what is the quality of your connection with yourself, with each other, and then something greater that knits us all together. So, first, let's talk about quality of connection to yourself as pertains to this question. And I want to acknowledge that I have a lot of privilege. Like, I have been lucky to have this role at Google and to have my career go fairly well. And I'm lucky to have everything that got me to that career. Like, I can point to so much, like my parents, some of my older siblings who, lifted me up and cared for me throughout my life, friends, access to so many good things in society. That said, the question I think that I would ask people to interrogate themselves with is, there's those things you feel like you have to do. Are you driven by fear or love and aspiration? And if it's by fear, that's not necessarily bad. Like, you might say, well, if I don't do this, I'm afraid of losing my job. And then so you can say, okay, I've named it, I've identified it. Let's put some parameters around it. Like, okay, if you say yes to this, like, are you just going to say yes to everything you're afraid of? For how long? And to what limit? And so for me, what I realized was I was never really interrogating those things. I was just saying yes, 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 yes. But I can't really draw a boundary unless I start to figure out, like, there's some limit to this. Like, if Google asks me to, do something illegal, I'm like, no, there's a limit there. They're like, really? Why? Like, okay, well, let's walk it back. What else wouldn't you do? And then by going through that, you can start to draw some boundaries. And so I think that's one thing, is like just get in the habit of interrogating for those things where you the immediate reaction before the rational thinking is fear. Ask why. Like, why am I afraid of this? And what's the limit to it? Now there's the connection with each other. So yes, have this conversation with yourself, but there's so much energy in being able to see others and be seen when you're all in a system like a Google or another corporate environment. And so one of the things that I've found by telling my story is, on the one hand, if you asked, hey, have you helped or hurt your reputation in a way that's good for your career? I'm like, I don't know. Good question. We'll see how this plays out. I'll let you know on LinkedIn. But the thing that I couldn't have anticipated is I feel an incredible lightness and freedom because I don't wear a mask anymore. And until you take it off, you don't know how heavy that thing is. It is really heavy. And we're all wearing it. And so Nadia, I think one of the reasons you probably get a lot of tears during your sessions is you're probably pretty effective at getting people to put their mask aside, at least for maybe just 30 minutes with you. And that's such a huge blessing. So kudos to you for doing that work. And so the question I would have for others is, one, if you are, let's say you're an individual contributor, are there opportunities where with certain people you can take off your mask more often? Or are there those ones where you're like, it would feel risky, but maybe I could? And are you willing to stretch a little bit and take it off just a little bit more? And then for the leaders in the system, there's an executive coach, Dr. Julie Gerner. I think she works in financial services with a lot of people in financial services out in New York. And one of the things I heard her say on a podcast was, I think as a leadership philosophy, bring your whole self to work it's not a good philosophy. The question you should be asking is, as a leader, what role do I need to be playing in this situation? And I actually completely agree with that, because we all play different roles, and it doesn't make us inauthentic. It just makes us intentional. Hopefully we're being intentional. And so to take that a step further, one leader who might think more traditionally might say, okay, well, that gives me permission to not open it up and not be vulnerable. She said, don't bring your whole self to work. I would say, what's the moment calling us to do right now? And so the way I'm interpreting it is, the role I'm being asked to play is model a different way of being and leading in the workplace so that we can take better care of ourselves and each other. Therefore, I'm going to bring more of myself to work, not less. And I can't make that decision for anyone else, but I would hope there are more leaders out there to know, like, hey, like, if you're not going to just flat out say, bring your whole self to work and think about what leader you need or what role you need to play as a leader, it can go both less vulnerable and it can go more vulnerable. And I think I have plenty of data saying more vulnerable is what's needed from leaders. And then finally is the connection to something greater that knits us all together. But let me pause there.
Well, I would love for you. Actually, I was going to ask for you to touch on that, because
I mean, I don't know if you know Newton, but I'm a witch. And so Jeff knows this. Spirituality, bring it on.
Yeah. I mean, we have very strong spiritual. So I'm a Christian, go to church every Sunday. It's a big part of my life. Nadia is very spiritual in very different ways, but it resonates, and I actually and I wrote down the name of this research that is taking concepts and making them more broadly applicable, because I do think there's so much beauty to the very simple call to action that you've given us, which is call to be in touch with yourself, to be in touch with others, and to be in touch with something bigger than you. Talk to us more about that third piece, because I do think that is no man's land in corporate speak.
So it's interesting to me in that, like, on the one hand, you could look at things like our performance management system. not just Google's, but let's say um, American culture corporations. And there's so many incentives and signals that maybe reinforce individual achievement. But if I look at, especially for a Google, where um, people are highly empowered, power is highly decentralized, and it's kind of both by design and then somewhat not by design. It's just kind of like grown and proliferated organically. Individuality or being overly individualistic is actually a really bad strategy. Like a better strategy is to recognize that we are interconnected in so many ways. I don't know anyone at Google except for maybe Jeff Dean who's smart enough to get anything done on their own. Like it just can't be done. So you could say, well, that's because the system's broken, or you could say that's because at this scale and for what we're trying to do, it just is. And then I could take it another step on along the lines of spirituality to say, and it's always been an illusion that we've ever been separate. We're deeply interconnected by so many systems. Like we come together as societies, as communities, in organizations to create value. We're connected in terms of our effects on the local community, our effects on climate. And so I think at a minimum, in thinking about how do you drive positive change in your context, a philosophy of interconnection is it's just more accurate than individualism. But then I think in terms of spirituality, I think about what are the things that are meaningful that you feel like you're a part of that you can contribute positively to. So I have heard a lot of people at Google after this hard year where we've gone through layoffs and cuts really asking for what's a positive hope for the future of our culture. And I think there's a lot of stronger signals around the positive hope around our technology, especially with the AI boom. But what about our culture? And my response to them is the culture is not separate from us, and it's not something owned by our leadership. We are the culture. And maybe I'm not as powerful a node in the system as anyone else, but I'm not separate from the system. So the what about the culture? My answer to that is, well, how are you going to embody and act in a way in line with the culture that you want? And that's step one. And then connect with someone else who feels similarly, and then connect with another and another and another, because you were always connected. And so what about the culture? That's my answer. We are interconnected and we own our destiny.
Okay, you go first, Jeff.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I think it's inspiring because it's so easy when you say it, right? Oh, you just connect and connect, and your culture's amazing, and it sounds so difficult, you know. Like there's a part of it that's tongue in cheek, and there's a part of it that is deeply true on returning to that foundation, returning to the simpleness of course that's how it is. Of course, it's as easy as connecting with each other, and then you have a positive culture. And yet we've pretended to make it way more complex than that.
Actually, I'll offer one thing that kind of subverts a lot of tech culture. We talk a lot about what's the problem, how do we solve it? In a complex system, you can't actually solve problems. You can only manage tensions and polarities because it's all interconnected. It's a wicked system. So that mindset, while in isolation, it might be really good for a project or a technical problem, but you apply that mindset to a complex system and it only leads to frustration. And so you might say like, well, then if I can't solve the problems here, does that mean I'm completely disempowered and therefore I shouldn't do anything? And my response to that person is like, well, that's up to you. But if you want to live a life of, without agency and empowerment, like I don't recommend that as living a good life. So my question is, it kind of goes back to, I'm not a Buddhist, so I apologize if I misstate this, but within this complex system where we're all interconnected, or within, say, Zen Buddhism, where it says we are all part of one infinite whole, I would ask, like, well, what's the right thinking and the right action if you were part of this whole in order to nurture the whole?
Okay, I'm gonna drop one of my bombs right towards the end. Here's the thing. Given that I'm very much aligned to your way of doing things, so I'm gonna put this as a premise and as a context. Like, I believe that the more people live with zeal, the more zeal there's gonna be for everyone, and then we're gonna heal. So very much on the pyramid of it starts with you and then reflects on others and then into the universe. Everything we spoke about today, I would probably bet $100 that if I were to walk to someone and say, listen to this episode and tell me, do you agree or do you disagree? Probably everyone would say, oh my God, I agree. Like, we are talking about things that masses would say, of course. Yet, in the systems, we witness every day, and we have proof every day. I mean, I'm sure you have more proof than the one that Jeff and I have, of situations that are pretty extreme. I'm currently supporting a friend, for example, that she sends me messages at midnight saying, I don't know why my manager is making my life so difficult. I hate my life. I don't know how to get out of this. Or other extreme situations of, I cannot go at work every day because I'm highly depressed. No one helps me, and on and on and on. So, if everyone agrees on the principles, then what happens, Newton? Then every day there still is the shit hitting the fan.
So there's a researcher named Carol Sanford. She's an expert on regenerative business. And I'm going to get this quote wrong, but I was reading one of her books, and one of the things that really stuck with me is, again, she's talking about complex systems, how, like, you can't fix things, like, you can only manage all these tensions and polarities. It's kind of like, the analogy I've heard in other places is differentiating between, like, you're not a mechanic with a car engine, you're a gardener planting seeds and nurturing plants. And no matter what you do, you can't force the plant to blossom. You might do all the right things, it might die. And so keeping that mindset, like, you're a gardener, you're not a mechanic, because you're not actually working on a car engine as much as you'd like to think you are. The question that she asked that stuck with me was, if you knew you didn't have to, or you even couldn't show up as the hero in this situation, what would you do? And when I heard that, for me, it was a bit of a punch in the gut, where I was like, I thought I was letting go of all of this, stuff around solving problems and needing to achieve. But what I realized was, so for that friend who's in pain who calls you, if that happened to me, there would be something deep inside me that said, if I don't relieve their suffering, I'm not a good friend, or I'm doing something wrong. And that's, in my mind, that's a lie, because you're a gardener, and you're not a mechanic, even though you're a much more able gardener, to the point where it might look like you're a mechanic sometimes, because you do this professionally with some people. Um, so the way I think about it, it goes back to, shit's going to hit the fan. There is no reality where I can do something and keep shit from hitting the fan today, tomorrow, or sometime in the future. Shit will always hit the fan. And it goes back to, therefore, do I want to live a life of disempowerment because shit will always hit the fan? Or do I want to recognize we're all interconnected, and therefore I'm going to choose to show up with compassion because we're all in this together?
Wow, Newton, that is such a a powerful and hilarious metaphor to leave on as we imagine. I'm just imagining us huddled under the fan that's getting shit hit on. And we're like, let's all go this way. Let's all go this way. Newton, I'm sure that people will be inspired by this episode. Where can they find you? What are the right places for folks to reach out and connect?
So 3 places. First, LinkedIn. That's where I post a lot of my content. Second place is Instagram. And that is mainly around powerlifting. But I've been surprised people have started asking me for like professional leadership advice and life advice there. I'm not looking to build a business around that, but I'm looking to help. Always happy to help. And then the last place, I haven't announced this. I need to do some sort of launch or something. But if you go to newtoncheng.com, I am putting together a website so that people who want to find me for things like workshops and speaking engagements, they can find me there and contact me.
This is so exciting. And when is your book coming out?
Oh man, I
You gotta.
I keep getting.
You have to write a book.
Getting that question. I have a bunch of things I've tried on Bard and Chat GPT to say like, can you get me started? And we're not there yet. So I think I'll just keep. I'm also a gardener, so I'm gonna keep planting seeds. We'll see what comes out. I think there's something around what I said earlier of living this audacious life where I pursue what looks like too much to some people, but if it's all hell yes, then I think it's about 1,000 times better than the alternative of living small and sacrificing my health to do so.
I mean, you have the title right there, Living an Audacious Life. There you go.
There we go.
Really love you. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been so amazing.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks, Newton. We'll be in touch.
All right.
Bye. Oh my gosh. I really love him.
What a story. I mean, it's really rare that you find people who are willing to tell it like it is, to the degree of, I burnt out, I took a leave, I reevaluated, and it made all the difference for my life and my leadership. Really powerful.
In such a very short amount of time, because he said that the leave was in 2022, so that was a year and a half ago.
Power of focusing on what matters.
Oh yeah, discipline there, discipline.
I am impressed by the level of discipline, which I do not share that trait. So I needed to use my strengths finder to find some other path to the same idea.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I'm with you on the discipline side. Okay, Jeff, here we go. Which of the many has been your favorite takeaway?
Well, I love polarity mapping. I do that with clients. I think it's one of the most powerful things for those that aren't familiar with it. It's absolutely worth a Google to release the pressure of solving problems and go to managing tension, as he said. So that resonates, but I'm going to pick another, so I'm cheating.
Ooh,
I loved when he said, what are you a part of where that you can make a positive difference on? That sentence to me is a very empowering sentence, because we're all a part of things that we can make a positive difference on. And that is how I go to bed happy. That is what I write in my gratitude journals, right? It's those little moments of, oh, I made a positive difference on that really matter. Because again, plenty of shit's going to hit the fan. Plenty of stuff's going to go wrong. But if you can still look back and go, positive difference here, I think that's a life well lived. So I thought that was just a very simple sentence that connected to so many concepts that we talked about throughout the show.
Well, our listeners one day might want to see your gratitude journal because you've been referring to it so many times.
I'm a big fan. Everybody should do it. I'm shocked what a difference it makes, actually.
Maybe one day we do an episode about that, you and I.
Yeah, I know you too. Okay, Nadia, what are you taking away?
I mean, listen, again, this is one of those episodes that I was literally saving and marking every word. It goes without saying that living an audacious life was pretty in line with how I live. I mean, I grasp and I take it with all my hands. But as a favorite one, look, when he mentioned Harvard Divinity School, I think you saw my face giggling. I was like, yes, yes, bring it on. And I really, really enjoyed how he made it relatable to the corporate world. Is right that especially the word spirituality comes with a lot of stigma and judgment and all of that. But what he said around the framework, that is yourself, each other, and something bigger, that really resonated with me because it gives me a validation and a reinforcement that we all have the power. We all can contribute. It doesn't matter if you are an intern, if you are a seasoned manager, if you are the VP, at any level, we can contribute in bringing positive net energy in. And because we're all interconnected, that creates a better system and creates a better universe for the entire world. So that's my life philosophy. Spark your zeal, everyone, because the more you put it in, the more there is for everybody.
I love it. Well, a powerful discussion today. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening with us. Please go to 99humans.com. Give us 5 stars on any streaming platform, and we'll see you next time.
Love it. Ciao, everyone. Bye.